You've never actually been alone. Even right now, in your quiet apartment, in a city of millions, your brain thinks it's surrounded. And that's exactly the problem. Think about today. You probably passed dozens of people on the street, sat near strangers on a train, scrolled past hundreds of faces on a screen. And yet, if someone asked you how many of those people you actually know, really know, the number would be almost nothing. That gap between how many humans your brain registers and how many it can actually hold onto has a name. And once you understand it, you'll never look at a crowded city the same way again. Let's start with a number. In the early 1990s, a British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar was studying something that seemed simple on the surface: primate brains. He noticed that across species, there was a tight relationship between the size of an animal's neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thought, and the size of the social group that species could maintain. Bigger neocortex, bigger stable social group, smaller neocortex, smaller group. So Dunbar did the obvious thing. He plugged humans into the equation. The number that came out was 150. Not 150 people you recognize. Not 150 people you follow online. 150 people whose relationships to each other you can actually track. Who's married to whom, who's feuding with whom, who owes who a favor. That's the ceiling. Dunbar argued that above roughly 150 people, human social bonds stop being personal and start being administrative. You know the role someone plays, you don't know them. And here's what makes this number so strange. It isn't just a modern guess. Anthropologists went back and checked it against the historical record, and it kept showing up everywhere. Hunter-gatherer clan sizes across dozens of documented cultures cluster right around 150. Neolithic farming villages, before the rise of cities, average out to roughly the same number. Even the basic fighting unit in ancient Roman legions, the century, was sized at around 100 to 150 men. Modern military planners still use similar numbers for infantry companies today, not because of tradition, but because beyond that size, cohesion breaks down and you need formal hierarchy just to keep people organized. For 300,000 years, this was simply the shape of human life. You were born into a band of roughly 150 people. You would, in all likelihood, die having met almost every single human you would ever meet inside that same number. Then, about 10,000 years ago, agriculture happened, and everything about the size of human groups broke loose. Farming meant you could feed more people than a hunting and gathering band ever could on the same land. Villages grew into towns. Towns grew into cities. By the time you get to ancient Rome, you're looking at a city of roughly 1 million people, a number no human brain had ever been designed to process. And here's the part that should stop you. The brain didn't get an upgrade. There was no biological update that shipped alongside the invention of cities. The exact same brain that evolved to track 150 relationships was suddenly being asked to exist inside a crowd of 1 million strangers, and it had absolutely no framework for that. So what did it do? It improvised. And this is where things get interesting, because your brain didn't just give up and treat everyone as a stranger. It built something to cope. Psychologists call it parasocial substitution, though the term is newer than the behavior. When your social circuits can't be filled with 150 real, reciprocal relationships, your brain starts accepting substitutes, familiar faces. The barista who makes your coffee every morning, the neighbor you nod at but never talk to, a podcast host whose voice you've heard for hundreds of hours, whose opinions you know intimately, who has no idea you exist. Your brain logs all of these as social contact. Partial credit toward the 150, even when the relationship only flows in one direction. This is also, by the way, why parasocial relationships with celebrities and online personalities feel so intensely real to people, and why losing access to a familiar public figure, even one you've never met, can trigger something that feels indistinguishable from grief. Your ancient wiring cannot fully tell the difference between someone you talk to every day and someone who talks at you every day. But here's the darker side of the coping mechanism, and it's the part that actually explains the loneliness. In a city, your brain isn't just processing 150 relationships anymore. It's bombarded every single day with thousands of human faces that register as social information but never resolve into anything. A crowded subway car isn't neutral to your nervous system. It's actually a low-grade social overload. Every face is a half-completed social calculation your brain has to run and then immediately discard because there's no slot left to store it in. Multiply that by every commute, every grocery store trip, every walk through a crowded street, and you get a brain running at a constant low hum of unresolved social processing. Researchers studying urban stress have found something that seems backward at first. People in dense cities often show higher baseline activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, than people in rural areas, even when the city is objectively safer. One leading explanation is exactly this mismatch. It's not that cities are more dangerous, it's that cities present far more unresolved social stimuli than a brain built for a band of 150 was ever meant to filter. And this is where the real trick reveals itself. Loneliness was never actually about how many people are physically near you. Loneliness is the gap between the number of relationships your brain is designed to expect and the number it's actually getting. In a small hunter-gatherer band, that gap barely existed. You were surrounded by 150 people and your social wiring was more or less fully occupied. In a modern city, you can be surrounded by literally millions of people and have that gap yawn wider than it would if you lived completely alone in the woods. The city doesn't just fail to fill the gap, it actively floods your social processing system with noise that feels like connection, but never becomes it. This is also why moving to a big city so often produces a very specific kind of loneliness, one that's almost impossible to explain to someone who hasn't felt it. It isn't isolation in the traditional sense. There are people everywhere. It's a loneliness that happens in the middle of a crowd, and it's precisely because the crowd is so large that the brain can't convert any of it into the kind of bonded, reciprocal relationship it evolved to expect. There's one more twist, and it might be the strangest part of all. Some researchers now believe social media didn't create a new problem so much as it industrialized this exact ancient one. A social media feed can present hundreds of faces an hour, each one triggering a tiny, incomplete social response. Your brain treats a stranger's face on a screen almost the same way it treats a stranger's face on a subway. As unresolved social information, it can't file anywhere. Except now, instead of encountering that overload for an hour on your commute, you can carry it in your pocket for 12 hours a day, everywhere you go. So what do you actually do with a brain that's still calibrated for a group of 150? While living inside a species that decided, only 10,000 years ago, to start building groups 1,000,000 times that size? The odd part is, the fix isn't more people, it's the opposite. Studies on social well-being consistently find that the people who report the lowest loneliness in cities aren't the ones with the largest networks. They're the ones who've deliberately rebuilt something close to that original number. A small, stable circle of relationships they actually maintain, layered concentrically the way Dunbar himself described it. 5 intimate confidants, 15 close friends, 50 meaningful acquaintances, and the rest, whatever the rest happens to be, functioning as background noise rather than a source of connection. You were never built to be known by a city. You were built to be known by about 150 people, and to let everyone else simply exist around you, unresolved and unremarkable. For 300,000 years, that was enough. It was, in fact, everything. So the next time you're standing in a crowd, surrounded by more human faces in 5 minutes than your ancestors would have seen in a lifetime, and you feel that strange, hollow ache of being alone in the middle of all of it, understand what's actually happening. Your brain isn't broken. It's just still counting to 150 in a world that stopped counting a long time ago.